AITAH for asking my sister to give me my money back after her husband made fun of my wife's scars. I'm in my mid-30s, married for nearly a decade to a woman I adore. We've built a life that many would envy, stable careers, a cozy home, and a bond that has only strengthened through adversity. I've always been the older sibling in my family, which often came with its own set of responsibilities and expectations, but I've embraced them willingly. My wife, Emily, is the most courageous person I know. A few years before we met, she survived a devastating car accident that changed her life forever. The accident left her with burns and scars across her arms and part of her face, marks from surgeries and skin grafts. Those scars are part of her story, physical traces of the nightmare she endured and conquered. But no amount of bravery completely erased the self-consciousness she sometimes feels when people stare or ask insensitive questions. I admire her resilience every day. The way she carries herself, fighting through the insecurities, the whispers, and the stares, that's real strength. Our marriage is built on openness and unwavering support. I never shy away from telling her how beautiful I find her, scars and all. She is, quite honestly, the most beautiful woman to me. My family is close-knit but complicated, as many families are. Among all my siblings, I've always been closest to my sister, Laura. We were inseparable growing up, partners in crime, confidants, and best friends. As adults, our relationship stayed strong, although life has introduced its share of complications. Laura got married a few years ago to a man named Jason. On the surface, Jason seems like a great catch. He's charming, articulate, and has a personality that lights up a room, but those closest to him know he can be arrogant and insensitive behind closed doors. His charm feels carefully manufactured, and he tends to make biting comments masked as jokes that often cross the line. When Laura and Jason decided to buy a house, I stepped in to help. I loaned Laura a significant sum to cover their down payment, something I did without hesitation because family means supporting each other. Over time, I also helped with other financial difficulties they faced, from medical bills to clearing debt. I never kept track of the totals because I saw it as an investment in my sister's future happiness and stability. Despite my financial support, there was often tension when it came to Jason. I didn't challenge Laura on her marriage, partly out of respect for her choices and partly because I hoped things would improve. She seemed happy, or at least content. But deep down, I noticed the subtle ways Jason could dismiss or belittle those around him, especially people he deemed weak. My wife has always been sensitive to these dynamics. Emily's scars made her a target for unwanted attention, and though I tried to shield her from judgment, the damage of cruel remarks lingered beneath the surface. So, this is the background: a stable marriage founded on love and respect, a sister I fiercely care for who married someone difficult, and a history of financial support extended without reservation. I thought I was just looking out for my family, until everything changed at that family dinner. The family dinner was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a rare moment when everyone could come together without distractions or disputes. It was the annual holiday gathering at my parents' house, a place packed with laughter, the scent of homemade dishes, and the sort of nostalgic warmth only family can bring. My wife, Emily, and I arrived early to help set things up, and everything seemed more or less normal at first. Laura and Jason showed up with their usual style, Laura dressed elegantly, as always, and Jason with that smug grin plastered on his face. The room was buzzing with chatter, cousins catching up, and my parents beaming with pride at having all their children and grandchildren under one roof. Emily and I found seats next to each other at the long table, comfortably holding hands across the surface, a silent reassurance that carried our years of shared joy and hardship. I glanced over at my sister, who was talking animatedly about their new house renovations, and Jason loomed nearby, occasionally interjecting with jokes or comments that drew a few chuckles from my family. It was during a lull in the conversation that Jason made his move, a moment that shattered the warmth in the room like a stone through glass. He glanced at Emily, his eyes narrowing slightly, before saying in a loud voice, "You know, I still can't get over how brave you must be, walking around with those battle scars. I mean, it's like you've had a run-in with a lawnmower or something. Pretty wild." There was an awkward silence that fell over the table. I could see Emily's face drain of color as her eyes glistened with moisture. The room felt suddenly colder, the joyous atmosphere replaced by shock and discomfort. I opened my mouth to respond, but Jason went on, "Hey, I'm just kidding. She's got a tough story or whatever, but honestly, it's kind of creepy. You'd think someone might cover that up, right?" Emily's lower lip trembled, and before anyone else had a chance to speak, she excused herself abruptly, pushing her chair back and walking away toward the hallway. I watched as she disappeared around the corner, her steps uneven and hurried. Fueled by a mixture of anger and disbelief, I slammed my fist onto the table and stood up, my voice shaking yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's enough, Jason. You have no right to talk about my wife like that." The room tensed instantly, eyes darting between us as the confrontation unfolded. Jason smirked, clearly unbothered. "Relax, man. It was a joke. Lighten up." "No. It wasn't a joke. You crossed a line," I said firmly, moving toward him. "You humiliated her in front of everyone. That's unacceptable." My sister stepped between us, her voice hurried and pleading. "Can we please not do this here? It's a family gathering. Jason didn't mean to hurt anyone. Let's just move on." But I couldn't move on, from the look of hurt on Emily's face, to the fact that Laura was more concerned about keeping the peace than defending her own husband's disrespect. As the argument escalated in front of the family, people shifted uncomfortably, some shaking their heads, others casting guilty glances. Laura urged me softly, "Please, don't make this worse. We're family." I looked right at her, confusion and hurt mingling in my words. "If Jason thinks it's okay to mock my wife like that, then you're choosing him over all of us." Her eyes flickered with something unreadable, but she didn't respond. After a few tense moments, I left the room to find Emily. She was sitting in the guest bedroom, tears sliding down her cheeks, shaking as she tried to control her breathing. I sat beside her and took her hands in mine, feeling a bitter ache in my chest that no apology could immediately heal. That moment marked a shift I didn't expect, a rupture in what I thought was an unbreakable family bond, and the beginning of a conflict that would test loyalty, love, and boundaries. The days after that family dinner were thick with tension and silent reminders of what had happened. Emily retreated into herself more than usual, hesitant to attend family events or even answer calls from my sister. I did my best to support her, but the ache of betrayal and frustration simmered just beneath the surface, making it hard to focus on anything else. I tried to reach out to Laura first, hoping to talk things through calmly, to express how deeply Jason's cruelty had hurt Emily and me. But her responses were short and dismissive. She kept insisting that Jason's comment was just a joke and that we were all overreacting. One evening, I confronted her directly in a phone call. "Laura, you have to understand, what Jason said was not funny. It was cruel. It affected Emily deeply, and it crossed a line." Laura's voice hardened. "I love Jason and I'm not going to throw our marriage under the bus because of some sensitive feelings. He didn't mean to hurt anyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Years of supporting her financially, emotionally, only to hear this cold justification. The anger and disappointment festered until I finally said something I hadn't planned. "Then if your husband can't respect my wife, I want my money back. Every cent I loaned or gifted you, it has to come back." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Laura snapped, "That's petty and selfish. You can't just use money as a weapon to control my marriage." The conversation ended on a bitter note, but that demand, asking for the repayment of the money I had given her without hesitation, felt like the only way to draw a line. I couldn't continue supporting someone whose husband was so openly disrespectful to the person I love most. The fallout spilled over to the extended family. Word got out about the argument, and soon family group chats were exploding with opinions, half the relatives siding with me for standing up for Emily, while the others accused me of overreacting and causing unnecessary drama. My parents tried to mediate, urging me and Laura to settle the matter quietly. "Family is more important than money and grudges," they reminded me repeatedly. But I couldn't just sweep it under the rug. Respect mattered. If Jason could degrade my wife so casually, what message did that send to the rest of us? Emily felt torn in the middle. She didn't want to be the reason for family strife but was profoundly hurt by Jason's remarks and Laura's unwillingness to defend her. She carried around a guilt that she blamed on herself, worrying she had somehow caused the conflict by her very presence. I reassured her, though it was hard to undo the damage. "This isn't your fault. You deserve to be treated with dignity." But the question lingered, had I crossed a line by mixing financial support with emotional pain? Asking for money back because of a personal insult felt harsh, but I also felt justified. It seemed impossible to separate the two when the foundation of trust had shattered so badly. My relationship with Laura shifted dramatically, from close sisterly companionship to a strained and fragile connection, weighed down by unspoken resentment and unresolved anger. This was more than a family disagreement now. It was a battle over values, loyalty, and respect, unraveling bonds I had once thought unbreakable. The quiet aftermath of the fallout didn't last long. What began as a private disagreement quickly spiraled into an all-encompassing conflict that engulfed the entire family. Group chats meant for sharing holiday plans and casual updates became battlegrounds for heated arguments and painful accusations. At first, I hoped reason would prevail, that Laura would see how deeply Jason's words hurt Emily and how her refusal to stand up for my wife only made things worse. But instead, the tension intensified. Laura's husband, Jason, refused outright to apologize or acknowledge any wrongdoing. He brushed off the entire situation as Emily being too sensitive, doubling down on his stance in conversations both private and public. The family was polarized. Some relatives quietly supported me, understanding that disrespecting scars, marks of trauma no less, was unforgivable. Others equated the conflict to typical family squabbles or believed the matter was being blown out of proportion. The most painful part was watching my sister and I grow further apart. Our once close relationship crumbled under the weight of loyalty conflicts. Laura kept defending Jason fervently, appearing to prioritize her marriage over our sibling bond or the pain caused to Emily. When I tried to reach out for dialogue, I was met with evasive answers or accusations that I was meddling too much in her personal life. Parents, too, stepped into the fray, caught in the middle between two children they loved. They urged me to let the issue go, pleading that money shouldn't come between family, that I should think about the bigger picture, family unity over individual disputes. But I refused. To me, respect was not something that could be sacrificed for appearances. If a family could not protect one of its own from humiliation, what was the point of sticking together? I told my parents plainly, if Jason can't offer an apology and Laura won't stand against him, then that's their choice. But I won't pretend it didn't happen to save a family image. The strain of isolation crept in. Family members who once confided in me grew distant or took sides quietly. Invitations to gatherings became scarce, replaced by formal messages carefully worded to avoid conflict. I began to feel like an outsider in the very family I had always supported and believed in. Meanwhile, the group chats flooded with mixed emotions. Messages critiquing both Laura and me piled up. Some slammed me for being inflexible and damaging relationships over petty issues, while others praised my stand against cruelty and injustice. Amid this upheaval, Emily's guilt weighed heavily on her. She questioned if her scars had caused this rupture, if her presence was the catalyst for family division. I tried to remind her that she should never feel responsible and that love meant protecting her, no matter what storms we faced. Yet, the most bitter truth settled in, this was no longer just a conflict about one cruel joke. It had become a battle for who our family was, and how far we were willing to allow love and respect to stretch. The division cut deep, and the wounds ran raw as each side entrenched itself, blurring the line between right and wrong family loyalty. Months passed with the tension simmering beneath the surface, a constant undercurrent at every family gathering, or, more accurately, the lack thereof. The distance between us had grown unbearable, and every attempt at reconciliation was met with bricks of stubbornness and resentment. Yet, none of us could avoid the inevitable any longer. The breaking point arrived at what was supposed to be a joyful occasion, my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. The house was packed with relatives, all dressed for the celebration, filling the rooms with polite smiles and forced small talk. I arrived with Emily, prepared to keep my guard up, knowing full well the hostility simmering beneath Laura and Jason's carefully controlled facades. As the evening progressed, the tension became thicker in the air than the scent of the flowers adorning the tables. Everyone was waiting, watching, sensing that beneath the surface, emotions were precariously balanced on a knife's edge. It wasn't long before Jason made another ill-considered comment. This time, it was during a toast, one that was meant to honor my parents but devolved quickly. Jason raised his glass and, speaking loud enough for those around him to hear, included an aside about getting used to family dynamics and joked about people being too sensitive over old scars. His tone was mocking, and there was a cruel glint in his eye as he looked directly at Emily. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the words, it was the blatant disrespect shown again, the immunity he seemed to feel because he was part of the family now. I stood up abruptly, glass in hand, and interrupted the toast. Jason, your so-called jokes aren't funny. They're hurtful, and if you care about this family at all, you will apologize to my wife right now. The room fell silent. Eyes darted between us, uncomfortable, amazed at the scene unfolding. Some family members murmured in agreement, others stared in shock. Jason laughed in response, a cold, defiant sound. Why? Because you can't take a joke? Grow up. I pointed directly at him. No. Because you humiliated the woman I love in front of her family. I'm telling you now, this stops here. Apologize, or don't expect me to be part of this family. Laura's face flushed red with anger, and she screamed, "You're destroying this family with your selfishness. You're tearing us apart over money and insults." Her words stung deeply, but I refused to back down. The fear that had held me back, the desire to preserve family peace at the expense of respect, vanished in that moment. I've asked you both to make this right, and you've chosen to support cruelty instead. I'm done. Without waiting for a reply, I left the room, Emily's hand firmly gripping mine. Behind me, I heard Laura's shouting continue as the anniversary celebration descended into chaos. Walking away felt heavy, bittersweet, a painful end to years of closeness and unconditional support. Emily looked at me with a mixture of pride and worry, pride because I had stood up for her, worry because our family was fracturing in a way it might never heal. That night, as we sat quietly at home, I grappled with the reality of what I had done. I had crossed a line from which there might be no return. But I also knew that to keep silent would have been to accept disrespect and betrayal. The family I loved was broken now. Whether it could be fixed was a question I wasn't sure anyone could answer. In the quiet aftermath of that explosive night, I found myself alone with my thoughts, and with Emily, who had been the unwitting center of the storm. The family I'd known, the sister I once confided in without hesitation, and the relationship between us all was fractured, possibly beyond repair. I love my sister. That has never changed. We grew up together, shared secrets, dreams, and even hardships. But now, that love is tangled in a web of disappointment and conflict. Laura chose her husband over me and over standing up for what was right, and I couldn't ignore that. Jason's mockery of Emily's scars was more than just a cruel joke, it was a violation of everything we believed family should protect against. My wife's scars tell a story of survival and strength, not something to be ridiculed for entertainment. Jason's lack of empathy, and Laura's unwillingness to defend her, felt like betrayal. But at the same time, I question if I crossed a line by demanding the repayment of the money I'd given Laura. Is it fair to mix financial support with emotional conflict? I gave her that money out of love and a desire to help. Asking for it back feels harsh, maybe even petty to some. Could I have handled this differently? Could I have insisted on respect without making money a weapon? I worry that by standing firm, I may have permanently damaged family bonds that once seemed unbreakable. Some family members see me as inflexible, even vindictive. Others quietly support me but hesitate to intervene, afraid of escalating the conflict. Emily is caught in the middle, proud of me for standing up for her but also worried that this fight has taken a toll on us all. The guilt she carries, blaming herself for causing stress or dividing the family, breaks my heart. I remind her that she is not the cause of this, that love and respect are non-negotiable. So here I am, typing this out because I have no one else to turn to for an honest perspective. I'm torn between my love for my sister and my loyalty to my wife, between the desire for family peace and the need for respect. Am I the asshole for asking my sister to give me my money back after her husband made fun of my wife's scars? I want to do right by everyone, but I fear I may have chosen the wrong way.